Welcome to West African Civilizations. This is Mr. Knox. Please pay attention so you can get some information that'll help you understand a little bit about West Africa. So, there were three main empires, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. You can see them overlapping over here on the map. Ghana was the first, which led to Mali, and then Songhai got a little bigger every time. Now, there were three empires, but we will be focusing on two main themes: why rise and why fall. We'll try and understand, why did the West Africans rise when they did and where they are? What were they doing right? What resources do they have? And why did they fall when they did? What went wrong? So, with that being said, why did they rise, where they are, when they did? The first thing to talk about is its location. Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, you can see the overlap of the maps, were located right between salt mines and gold mines. They were also conveniently located on this thing called the Sahel. It's a fertile region between the desert and the rainforest. It's a strip from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Indian Ocean. So they had fertile land, and they had salt in the north, they had gold in the south. And when people have gold and salt, they usually want to trade. So traders would come by, and they started to develop cities in this fertile region. Gold was so abundant, meaning it was everywhere. There was so much of it. If you took 1 pound of gold and 1 pound of salt, it was valued equally. If you had a pound of salt in your hand, you could walk up to a gold trader and say, hey, I would like a pound of gold. And they would be okay with that. Salt was so important because it helped preserve food. For people who lived in the deserts or wherever, didn't have refrigeration, salt would help meat last longer. It also gave some good taste to their food. And again, gold was everywhere. Very, very valuable. Now, West Africa had all that gold. And the Mediterranean, I'm talking about Italy, Greece, the Middle East, Turkey, all that, they loved gold. And when the Roman Empire fell around, let's say 500 CE, when they fell, they left behind roads. When the Roman Empire expanded, they built roads everywhere, connecting all their cities, all their land. And when the roads expanded all the way to North Africa, that connected the Middle East and North Africa. Now, there are these people called the Berber traders. The Berber traders moved a lot in Africa. And when they got camels and they realized that gold was so valuable in West Africa, so abundant in West Africa and so valuable in the Mediterranean, they started trading and moving through the Sahara thanks to these camels. When they traveled through the desert, they needed to stop for water every now and then because you'll die if you don't have water. Luckily, there's these things called oases, or singular oasis, that allowed for those Berbers to travel from North Africa and the Mediterranean, where people loved gold, to West Africa, below the Sahara Desert, where there was tons of gold. Here's a map of all those trading routes that were used by not just the Berber traders, but mainly the Berber traders. With that gold that was traded to the Mediterranean, lots of valuable other goods were brought back, and lots of ideas were brought back also. Like I said before, gold, loved by the Europeans, loved by the Middle East. It was a sign of wealth. Kings wore gold. If you had gold, that basically meant you were elite, a noble, you were wealthy. Now, one guy from West Africa that most people know about, his name was Mansa Musa. He was Muslim, And he was so devout, he decided to fulfill one of those 5 pillars of Islam, which is a pilgrimage or a holy trip to Mecca, the most important city for all Muslims. On his way, again, he had so much gold, he just passed it out to people. And that got the ear and the eye and the interest of Europeans in the Middle East. When he got to Mecca, he did what he needed to do as a devout Muslim, and eventually he had to travel back. When he traveled back, he brought scholars, he brought education, he brought more organization. He brought a lot of Islamic ideas. Another guy that's good to know, his name is Ibn Battuta. He was a little bit after Mansa Musa. He was a Muslim scholar that also traveled all over the place. You can see on this map all those squiggly lines going all over the place. That's where he went, up the coast of Africa, all the way to China and India and Persia, right? So he was one of those guys who was interested because of Mansa Musa's trip. So he made the trip over to West Africa. He documented his travels. He wrote down his travels. And we know a lot about West Africa thanks to him. Not only did West Africa have gold, not only did they have all these goods that they traded with that gold, they also had a lot of Middle Eastern influence. One thing that helped them rise to power was the written language of Arabic. When it was brought over from the Middle East, it helped them organize. It helped with administration. It helped them write down records. Previous to learning the written language, they were more of oral history passed down through generation just by word. Now, I'm not saying everyone became a Muslim, everyone converted to Islam. It was eventually adopted by the ruling elite, the nobles, the rich, the kings. A lot of tribes held on to their native beliefs. Luckily, Islam was very tolerant of those different native beliefs. There were many, many tribes that had different beliefs. And with one king in control, one emperor, he's Islam and he's allowing them all to keep their beliefs and keep them safe and stable. The civilization thrived. Some people also believe that the kings became Muslim or adopted Islam because they wanted a connection with the established kingdoms in the Middle East. Now, those were a couple reasons why Western civilizations thrived. Now let's talk about why did they fall? So dynasties, the emperors and the kings, when they had sons, their sons also became kings. Rule was passed down through bloodline. Problem is, not all sons are that great at ruling. So after a couple generations, let's say 100, 150, 200, whatever it is, after a couple generations, the sons may not be that great at ruling anymore, which led to some internal strife or conflict within the civilization, the empire. And you remember me saying earlier, different tribes had different beliefs. That was still true for many. So not everyone got along really well. And now that the ruler is not there to keep them under control, stuff starts to get crazy. Eventually, in 1591, people from Morocco, expanded their own empire so far south down into the Songhai Empire, the third of the Western civilization empires. If you look on the map, you'll see Fez and Marrakesh up on the top. That's up by Spain, the Mediterranean. They rode their horses and their camels all the way down. And with that internal strife, no strong leader anymore leading them all and uniting them all, Morocco eventually conquered and brought an end to medieval West Africa as we know it. That is all for now. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you in the next unit.